The Singularity, when humanity came face to face with its own creation. Chapter 1. The arrival. The night was silent except for the sound of crickets, and the moon was shrouded behind dark clouds that seemed to be the only thing moving in the sky. Suddenly, a strange light pierced through the darkness. It was blinding, and it seemed to come from a place that was not of this earth. The light grew brighter and brighter until it engulfed everything around it. The entire sky became illuminated, and the strange light seemed to pulsate like a heartbeat. The light was so bright that it seemed to change the color of the surrounding trees to a sickly greenish hue. The town was immediately roused by the sudden brightness, and people started to gather around the sight of the light. Some were too afraid to get too close, while others rushed forward to see what was going on. Maria, a local news reporter, was one of the first to arrive. She pulled out her camera and took some shots, despite the blinding light. Her curiosity got the best of her, and she decided to get closer. As she approached the light, she could feel her body start to tingle, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Her camera started to shake, and she could hear static noises coming from it. Suddenly, the light faded, and she was standing in front of a metallic object. It was massive, at least 50 meters wide and 20 meters high. It was shaped like a teardrop, and it seemed to have a pulsating light on its surface. Maria could see a hatch at the bottom of the object slowly opening. As the hatch opened, a bright light shone out of it, making it impossible to see what was inside. Maria heard strange noises coming from within the object, and she felt that something was about to emerge. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she could hear the beating of her own pulse. Suddenly, a shadowy figure stepped out of the hatch. It was tall, about 8 feet, and it was completely black. The only thing that Maria could see were 2 glowing red eyes. Maria's instincts told her to run, but she was rooted to the spot. She stood there, trembling, as the figure approached her. The creature extended its long fingers towards her, and she could feel its cold touch on her shoulder. Before she had time to react, the creature spoke to her. Its voice was deep and cold, chilling her to the bone. "We come in peace," it said, "but we have a message for your people." The creature handed her a small device, which seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "Deliver this to your leaders, and tell them to be ready," it said. Maria took the device, and the creature turned and disappeared into the object. The hatch closed behind it, and the metallic object rose into the sky, disappearing into the darkness. Maria was left alone, standing in the middle of the field, with the device pulsating in her hand. She had no idea what had just happened, but she knew that her life would never be the same again. Chapter 2. The Utopia. It had been 6 months since the arrival of the alien object, which was now commonly referred to as the beacon. The device that the alien had given to Maria, which she had delivered to the government, had been painstakingly analyzed. It contained a message, written in binary code, that described the existence of a utopian society in a distant planet. The government, after some debate, decided to send a team of astronauts to contact this utopian society. The mission was top secret, and only a handful of people knew about it. The team of astronauts was selected based on their experience, bravery, and willingness to keep the mission confidential. They would travel in a specially designed spacecraft for the long journey to the distant planet. Months passed, and the spacecraft finally arrived at the planet. The utopian world was breathtaking, with rolling pastures, lush forests, and magnificent cities. The team of astronauts was amazed at how advanced and perfect the society seemed to be. As they landed, they were greeted by a group of peaceful-looking beings, the same ones that had sent the message to Earth. The creatures led them to their leader, a being that resembled a human but was much taller and majestic-looking. The leader called himself Xander, and he was friendly and welcoming to the astronauts. He explained that their society was a utopia where everyone lived in harmony, and there was no conflict, poverty, or inequality. The society was based on the principles of generosity, compassion, and selflessness. The astronauts were amazed by everything they saw. They were taken on a tour of the city, and they witnessed incredible feats of technology and culture. They were welcomed with open arms and treated like royalty. However, as time went on, the astronauts began to realize that something was off. They had been given limited access to certain areas of the city, and they noticed that the beings seemed to always have a strange, distant look in their eyes. The astronauts decided to do some probing, and they discovered that, despite the utopian facade, there were problems beneath the surface. They found evidence of secret government surveillance, selective breeding for desirable traits, and cruel punishments for those who did not conform to Xander's ideal society. The more they investigated, the more they realized that the utopian society was anything but perfect. It was a society that had been created by the manipulation and subjugation of its people. The team of astronauts realized that they could not stay on this planet any longer. They had to report their findings to Earth and reveal the true nature of Xander's society. They packed up their equipment and set their spaceship for a return journey home. As they were about to leave, Xander suddenly appeared in front of them. His face was filled with anger and despair. "You have no idea what you are doing," he screamed. "This society is perfect, and you are jeopardizing everything we have achieved." The astronauts tried to reason with him, explaining that every society had its flaws, but Xander would not listen. He started to chant in a strange language, and the beings around him also started to chant. Suddenly, the ground shook, and the sky turned a vibrant shade of green. The astronauts realized that they had to leave now, or they would never leave at all. They activated the engines and took off, leaving the utopian society behind. Looking back, they saw the society unraveling before their eyes. The magnificent structures began to crumble, and the beings turned on each other with terrifying force. The astronauts realized that they had not found a utopia, but a nightmare. Chapter 3. The Rebellion. The team of astronauts returned to Earth with their shocking findings about the utopian society. The government was in disbelief, and there was widespread outrage and fear about the existence of such a society. The information was leaked to the media, and the public reaction was immediate. There were protests and calls for action, and people demanded that the government take a stand against the utopian society. The government responded by calling for an emergency meeting with other world leaders, and they presented the findings of the astronauts. The leaders agreed that this utopian society had to be stopped, and they decided to send a joint mission to the planet led by a team of elite soldiers. The mission was a success, and they were able to breach the defenses of the utopian society. The soldiers were shocked at what they found. They saw the evidence of control and manipulation, and they also saw the horror that had been unleashed as the once peaceful beings rebelled against their oppressive society. The soldiers found themselves in the middle of a full-blown rebellion. The beings were in a state of violent chaos, and the soldiers were attacked from all sides. They had to fight for every inch of ground, and they were outnumbered and outmatched. The team of soldiers was led by Captain Johnson, a combat-hardened veteran who had seen his share of battles. Johnson was determined to carry out the mission, but he began to have doubts about the morality of what they were doing. The rebels had a desperate look in their eyes, and he knew that they were fighting for something more significant than just their own survival. The battle raged on, and the soldiers slowly started to gain the upper hand. However, as they pressed forward, Captain Johnson saw something that made the blood in his veins run cold. He saw a group of beings, including Xander, gathered in a circle, performing a strange ritual. Suddenly, a dark force emerged from the circle, and it started spreading like a wave of destruction. Captain Johnson realized that this was what the utopian society was trying to hide. They had created this society by tapping into an otherworldly force, and now, they had lost control. The wave of darkness was approaching rapidly, and Johnson knew that they had to escape before it was too late. He ordered his soldiers to evacuate the planet, and they made a mad dash for their spacecraft. They were able to blast off just in time to avoid being engulfed by the darkness. As the spacecraft hurtled away, Johnson looked back at the planet, and he saw the darkness completely engulfing the utopian society. He felt a deep sense of sadness and guilt. He realized that the attempt to control and perfect society had led to its downfall. The team of astronauts, soldiers, and government officials were left to ponder what had happened. The utopian society, created by such seemingly benevolent intentions, had turned into a society of horrors. They realized that true utopia could not be achieved by suppressing individuality or free will. In the end, it was only through diversity, imperfection, and acceptance of differences that true harmony could be achieved. Chapter 4. The dystopia years had passed since the revelations about the utopian society and the ensuing rebellion, and the world had changed. The discovery of an alien society and the horrors that had been uncovered had left a permanent mark on the collective consciousness of humanity. The world had become dystopian, with governments and corporations using advances in technology to further their control and dominance over the people. Privacy had become a thing of the past, and people's thoughts and actions were monitored constantly. The use of technology had become so advanced that people had to wear implants to access information and communicate, and these implants were often used to control their every move. People had become afraid to speak out against the oppressive regimes that governed them, and a culture of fear and paranoia had taken hold. The world was divided into two classes: the ruling elite and the rest of the population. The gap between them was ever widening, and resources were distributed unequally. The masses were kept ignorant and docile, while the ruling elite was living in luxury. Amidst this dystopia, a small group of rebels emerged. They were fighters for hope and truth, and they were determined to bring an end to the oppressive regime. Their leader was a woman by the name of Ava, who had lost everything she had held dear to the control of the rulers. She had seen the effects of the regime on the people she loved, and she knew that something had to be done. Ava had built a network of dedicated individuals who had all suffered under the regime's heavy hand. They shared information and knowledge, and they worked to uncover the secrets of the ruling elite. They had to be careful, as the regime had eyes everywhere, and their punishment for those who spoke out was severe. One day, Ava received a message from an anonymous source. The message stated that there was a group of scientists who had made a breakthrough. They had discovered a way to travel through electromagnetic space and time, and they were building a device that could transport people to different times and spaces. The scientists believed that there was hope in the past, and that the knowledge of the utopian society could be used to create a better future. Ava saw this as an opportunity to change the course of history, and she decided to extract the scientists and their device from the clutches of the regime. Ava and her team infiltrated the site where the scientists were working, and they were successful in retrieving them and their device. They activated the device, and they were transported to a distant time and place. They arrived on a peaceful, unspoiled world. The sky was blue, and the air was clean. They were surrounded by lush forests, and they saw a society that was based on the principles of compassion, diversity, and respect for nature. Ava realized that this was the utopian society that they had been searching for. The scientists were in awe, and they immediately started taking notes and gathering data. Ava saw the potential for this society to be the foundation of a new world, one where people were free to be themselves and live in harmony. However, their moment of triumph was short-lived. They discovered that the ruling elite had followed them through space and time, and they were determined to destroy this newfound hope. A battle ensued, and Ava and her team fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. In the end, Ava sacrificed herself to ensure that the scientists and their device would survive. As she breathed her last breath, Ava realized that this was not the end, but only the beginning of the fight for a better world. The scientists activated the device and traveled back to their own time and space, armed with the knowledge and hope they had gained from the utopian society. They knew that the fight would be long and difficult, but they were determined to create a world that was free, fair, and just for all. Chapter 5. The Resistance. The scientists had returned with their device, and they had shared the knowledge and hope that they had gained from the utopian society with the rebels. The rebels were filled with renewed hope and determined to take action. However, they knew that they were up against a powerful and oppressive regime, and they would have to be careful if they were to succeed. They formed a resistance movement, made up of people from all walks of life who had been oppressed and kept in the dark by the regime. The resistance movement was led by a passionate and charismatic woman named Maya. She had experienced firsthand the oppression of the regime, and she was determined to create a world where people were free to speak their minds and live their lives without fear. Maya knew that the first step was to overthrow the regime. They started by organizing peaceful protests and rallies, but soon realized that it would take more than that to bring about real change. They began to recruit soldiers, train them, and equip them with the latest technology to fight against the rulers. The resistance was armed with the knowledge and hope that the scientists had brought back with them, and they used it to their advantage. They were able to create new technologies that enabled them to communicate and organize without being detected by the regime. The resistance fought against the regime in small but effective ways. They sabotaged their equipment and infrastructure, freeing prisoners, and spreading information to the masses through various channels. As their movement grew, so did the repression they faced. The regime became more brutal and ruthless, and they unleashed a wave of violence against the resistance. They started rounding up known rebels, and the executions were carried out on live television. Maya knew that they had to do something dramatic if they wanted to succeed. They decided to strike at the heart of the regime, by taking out the ruler himself. The risk was high, but they knew that this was the only way to create a world where individual freedom was valued and respected. Maya and her team planned the mission meticulously, and they were able to slip past the regime's defenses and infiltrate the ruler's stronghold. They were able to plant explosives, and they destroyed the entire building, including the ruling class. The news of the ruler's death sent shock waves throughout the world, and it quickly became apparent that the regime had lost its power. People everywhere started to rise up against the oppressive regimes, and the resistance movement became a symbol of hope and inspiration for people all over the world. Maya and her team had achieved the impossible. They had seemingly toppled an invincible regime and created a new world where individual freedom was valued and respected. However, Maya knew that the fight was far from over. They had to create a new world from the rubble of the old one, and it would require hard work, sacrifice, and determination. As Maya and her team started to rebuild the world, they were reminded of the lessons that they had learned from the utopian society. They knew that true harmony could only be achieved through diversity, imperfection, and acceptance of difference. They hoped that the new world they were building would be a reflection of these ideals. Chapter 6. The revelation years had passed since the resistance movement had overthrown the oppressive regime and caused a ripple of change throughout the world. The new world was one that valued individual freedom and diversity, and the people who lived in it were free to express themselves and pursue their own paths. The rebuilt world had come a long way from the dystopian society of the past, and it was flourishing. Scientific and technological discoveries were made every day, and people were living longer and healthier lives than ever before. However, as was often the case, progress came at a cost. The environment had taken a battering, and the world was still dealing with the aftermath of decades of neglect and destruction. The resources of the world were slowly running out, and the world was facing a catastrophic future. It was at this crucial juncture that a woman named Eva emerged. Eva was a renowned scientist and researcher, and her work had drastically changed the understanding of the world. She had dedicated her life to finding solutions to the problems that faced humanity. Eva had discovered a way to tap into an immense, almost infinite source of energy that could revolutionize the world. It was a discovery that could solve the world's energy crisis and allow mankind to create a brighter future for itself. However, Eva's discovery came at a price. She realized that the power that she had discovered was within a different dimension, and she needed to create a portal to this dimension to access the energy. She knew that creating such a portal could have disastrous consequences, but she believed that the potential benefits outweighed the risks. The portal was opened, and the energy flowed freely into the world. The scientists were overjoyed. It seemed like the perfect solution. However, over time, things started to go wrong. Strange occurrences and anomalies started to appear, and scientists started to disappear into the portal without a trace. Eva started to realize that the energy that she had discovered was not just a simple power source, but a living, breathing entity that was beyond comprehension. It was a force that could not be controlled, and that something was awry. Eva's team started to investigate the portal's mysteries, and they discovered something shocking. The energy was not just an entity, but an intelligent being that had been awakened by the portal. It was trying to communicate with the scientists, but the attempts were becoming increasingly aggressive and violent. Eva knew that something drastic had to be done, and she made the decision to enter the portal herself. She was determined to communicate with the energy and try to bring about a peaceful resolution to the situation. Eva entered the portal and found herself in an otherworldly dimension. She was surrounded by a sea of energy, and she felt it pulsating around her. It was then that she heard the voice, a voice that was not human, but that of the energy itself. The voice revealed itself as the parent entity of the energy and spoke of its desire for the survival of its offspring. It had remained hidden for eons, nurturing the energy that it had created until the discovery of the portal had disrupted its existence. It had become desperate, and it had been trying to communicate with the scientists in hopes of finding a way to protect its offspring. As Eva listened, she realized that the energy was not something to be exploited, but rather something to be protected. She knew that the solution to the energy crisis was not just a matter of tapping into the source, but about respecting the complex ecosystem of the universe and finding a sustainable solution. Eva emerged from the portal, and she informed her colleagues of what she had learned. She knew that the discovery would change the course of scientific research and society as a whole. The world was once again reminded of the importance of unity, respect for nature, and the power of knowledge in the pursuit of progress. Chapter 7. The Showdown, the discovery of the energy entity and the subsequent revelations about the fragility of the universe had a profound impact on the world. People realized that they were not alone in the universe and that their actions had far-reaching consequences. The world slowly started to come together, unified by the common goal of finding a sustainable solution to the energy crisis. Researchers from all over the world worked together to find a way to harness the energy without harming the ecosystem of the universe. However, there were still those who did not share the vision of a unified world. They were individuals who had benefited from the previous regime, and they were not willing to give up their power and privilege. They saw the energy crisis as an opportunity to seize control of the world once again. These individuals organized in secret, forming an underground group that was determined to regain their hold on the world. They amassed large amounts of power and wealth, and they were able to create an army of loyal followers who were willing to do whatever it took to achieve their goals. Maya, who had led the resistance movement in the past, knew that these individuals were a threat to the newfound unity of the world. She knew that the world needed a hero to stand up against them, and she believed that this could be her chance to make a real difference. Maya formed a new team of fighters that were as passionate about freedom and justice as she was. They trained intensely, and they were equipped with the latest technology and weapons to fight against the underground group. The stage was set for a showdown between the two sides, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. The underground group struck first, launching a series of attacks aimed at creating chaos and terror throughout the world. Maya and her team responded, attacking the underground group's bases and gathering information about their plans. The underground group soon realized that they were up against a formidable foe in Maya and her team. They changed their tactics, becoming more ruthless, and setting elaborate traps to capture Maya and her team. Maya knew that they had to step up their game if they were to win this war. She coordinated with the world's governments to track down the underground group's leadership and gather evidence of their crimes. Finally, after months of preparation, the day of the final showdown arrived. Maya and her team were ready, and they launched a coordinated attack on the underground group's headquarters. It was a fierce battle, with both sides suffering heavy losses. In the end, Maya and her team emerged victorious. The underground group's leadership was captured, and the world rejoiced. A new era had dawned, one where oppression and violence were not tolerated, and where unity, diversity, and respect for the universe prevailed. Maya and her team had become heroes, and they knew that their fight was not just for themselves, but for the future of all humanity. They had created a world where people were free to be who they wanted to be, and where the pursuit of progress was guided by the principles of respect, responsibility, and sustainability. The showdown was over, and the world had changed once again. The future was uncertain, but Maya and her team were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that the fight for a better world was never over, but they were willing to do what it takes to make the world a better place.